Going over today is mental fitness, mental toughness, goal setting, and it all kind of starts out with mental preparation. So there's a few things to mental preparation: visualization, some self-talk, and pre-performance routines. So with visualization, either one of you guys heard about visualization, success, all that stuff? Good. So when we're preparing to do stuff, I'm going to relate a lot of stuff to Ironman triathlon, since that's kind of what I enjoy doing, and that's where it's easy for me to make those examples. So an exercise that we're going to do is kind of just envisioning some of that success, some of the hurdles, how to get past it, and not kind of stress ourselves out about it. So what I want everybody to do is just kind of see an obstacle in your mind. Maybe it's the biggest hill and your legs are going, I really don't want to have to deal with this right now. Maybe it's a deadline for work that's vastly approaching and you've procrastinated so much to where you're like stressing out, how am I going to do this? Or maybe for some of the guys, maybe for some of the guys, it's, they're playing flag football, it's third down, and they're not really sure that they're going to be able to make that first down. So as you're kind of starting to visualize some of this stuff, notice how you feel. Are you frightened, scared, frustrated? Notice any negative emotions that might start to come up. Now, make that picture a little bit smaller and smaller, and put it far off in the distance, and make that picture or challenge dark, dull, with no color. And notice how you start to feel. Now's the time to visualize the outcome that you want as vivid and vivid in color, as bright as you can, and for the most part as detailed as you can. And bring that visualization right up close in front of your face. And that's really all there is to it. It doesn't have to be hard, but you need to be precise about it. The more precise, the more success that you're going to have being able to get over that challenge and start creating some of these goals. Self-talk is one of the most important and kind of strategies that I use, and I feel that self-talk governs everything we do through the day, including our moods. Once that negative self-talk kind of creeps in and you let that negativity kind of take hold, it changes your entire outlook on the day. So we want to try to be as positive as possible no matter what. So even if it's you wake up and you want to be positive because your hair had a great hair morning, you didn't have to deal with that a whole lot, and it makes my day really easy because I don't have a whole lot. But it can be really simple. It doesn't have to be complex. Because just like negativity, when positivity starts to build, it changes your whole day, and all of a sudden we start to look for those positive things. And I'm sure you've heard it before. When one thing goes good, everything else in the day starts to go good. So that's just the power that self-talk has. Some pre-performance routines. We've all watched sports before, especially when they started. Football players, they happen to take the field, they do their warm-ups. Some players have their own routine. Maybe it's as they're being called out onto the field, they do whatever dance that they do. And these are all routines that help them get over some of the challenges that they might be facing. So like the football player, he's thinking, gosh, we got to win this game if we're going to get on into the playoffs. So those routines all build into those healthy habits. Now, the next talking point, reasonable expectations, when it comes to setting goals, is we want to make sure that our goals are realistic, so that kind of screwed up there, but we want them to be realistic and not unrealistic. So what's some of the goals that you guys might have that's a realistic goal? Okay, so what's with those two goals that you guys just said, what might be an unrealistic goal? All right, come on in. Okay.
I think setting up here is like not, maybe pushing
Learning
yourself.
something new, but between now and the final.
Oh yeah, learning something new would be mine. That would scare me. I think on yours though, something that would be unrealistic, at least what I think, is if you like set yourself on a pace and then all of a sudden you like got caught up in everybody else's pace and went too fast and then you weren't able to finish the ride.
Okay. So, and what's your name?
Lisa.
Lisa. I'm Chris. I was waiting for a few more people to come in, but so what might be a realistic goal, an unrealistic goal for you?
No, in general.
In general. Well, we're using this examples for you. So with Kelsey, it was passing her final. That was a realistic goal. And an unrealistic goal for her would be for something new to pop up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be scary. That would just put my
So I'm
finals.
an actual example.
Yep. 'Cause-
Unrealistic goals for me to lose 60 pounds. Which I really like to do.
okay.
But something realistic. Traveling to Scotland.
Okay. Okay. So let's see if I can remember everybody's realistic and unrealistic goals. So for your realistic goal might be, or your unrealistic goal might be to lose 60 pounds. But if we be more specific and go, I want to try to lose 60 pounds in 6 months, all of a sudden it becomes very realistic. And the unrealistic goal, or in your case, the realistic goal of traveling to Scotland, to be a little bit more specific and make it more realistic, is set when. Now, passing the final, to be a little bit more specific, would be to pass the final with like a 83%. And let's see, your unrealistic goal, something, yeah, of passing the final with 100% and not studying. And then for, and what's your name?
Lara.
Lara. So your realistic goal was to complete the bike ride. Awesome. So to be more specific with that goal is to finish the bike ride in a time frame, or finish the time frame, or finish the bike ride so that when I cross the finish line, I still look good for the pictures.
And you're not laying on the ground.
Yep. And an unrealistic goal would be to say, I'm going to finish the bike ride in 1 hour. So, yeah, the whole picture thing is my wife's favorite thing, because she'll do like 5Ks and marathons, and she did it at Ironman when we first met, and she stopped right short of the finish line. She put on like a little bit of makeup, cleaned up her face, did her hair, and I'm like, what are you doing? You got to get across the finish line. She goes, no, I have to look good for the pictures. Yeah, and
Even if you're laying on the ground.
part of setting these realistic goals and kind of identifying the unrealistic goals is the amount of change, some of the speed and ease of change, and the effects of change on other aspects of your life. So using myself, in my opinion, a realistic goal for me is to say that I'm going to go to the Ironman World Championships next year, and I'm going to qualify at one of the hardest races on the Ironman circuit. But to make that realistic, I can go, well, if I give myself 2 years, that means that I'm going to give myself plenty of time to train. I'm not going to force myself to train harder and shorter. I'm going to give myself plenty of time to recover. And the other aspects of that. So when you're training for these longer endurance stuff, you sacrifice other stuff, like whether it be, well, nobody wants to sacrifice work because that's how you get paid. So generally what what gets sacrificed is your social life and your family. So by setting that goal far enough out, I can start making the other changes so that the expectation of what I'm doing is there, and I can kind of not kind of stress myself out over it. The next talking point here is mental strength. Mental strength kind of depends a whole lot on that negative and positive self-talk. So when we want to be strong mentally, we want to be calm, centered, and focused on your goal, even in the midst of chaos. So going back to the bike ride, if your goal is to finish that race, then you need to be focused on your goal instead of worrying about the traffic stopped back at the start line. What happens if they let traffic go? Am I going to be fast enough? So you want to be really calm and focused so that your mind doesn't start to kind of drift from what you're focused on. Because kind of a side effect to that is when your mind starts to drift, that's when some of that negativity starts to chime in, and you got to really kind of head it off as fast as you can so that it doesn't kind of spread into your mind. And I see a lot of that when I'm giving swim lessons to adults that haven't swam before, is that mentally they haven't been swimming, they're an adult, there's a lot of stuff going on, and being as calm in the water as possible is going to keep them alive. It's going to keep them floating on the surface, because once that negative talk and that panic starts to set in, you start to sink. So it's a constant battle of that negative versus positive. And we want to have a big enough vision to get through kind of like the lows or the valleys, so that when times get tough, where you're kind of like, maybe I chose too lofty of a goal, maybe I can't do that. You need to, it needs to be big enough, and that why you signed up for it is going to get you through those downtimes. So some of the exercises to increase mental strength is to really evaluate your core beliefs, expend your mental energy wisely, replace the negative with the positive, practice tolerating discomfort, and reflect on your daily progress. So evaluate your core beliefs. That's kind of a tough one, because sometimes in today's world we tend to go with the flow, especially here on the West Coast versus the East Coast. And because we go with the flow, we don't really set any footing on what our core values are, what our core beliefs. So when we get into that face of adversity, we're kind of like, well, I don't know what to do. And by setting down some roots with some of those beliefs of what you stand for, how you're going to overcome those challenges, it makes you become that much stronger. And expend your mental energy wisely. That has to do more with, are we going to focus on stuff that we can control or stuff that we can't control? Or are we going to focus on worrying about, hey, what's Kim Kardashian doing, versus, hey, there is a tsunami coming towards the coast of San Diego, what am I going to do? So we want to make sure that we spend our mental energy wisely, because we've only got so much. 'Cause I know I've come home from work or dealing with some coaching swimmers or athletes to where I'm just like, man, I'm mentally drained. And you just flop down, read a book, and so we want to use that energy wisely. And tolerating discomfort, things are going to get tough, especially if you're riding that bike. Sometimes the road's not going to be as smooth as we want, and or something might happen. You might drop your water bottle, and we need to get through some of that discomforting feeling so that when bad stuff happens or stuff that is unexpected happens, we can stay calm, centered, and focused on what our goals are. And reflecting on daily progress, who doesn't like to see positive things and you progressing towards your goal? So how do we set those goals? Does everybody know what a SMART goal is? Yeah. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So this is going to be a nice little rehash, but this is what we have to do because who knows, maybe Morgan might want to send the video out. So your specific goals, this is where it comes into, like I said earlier, like with you passing the final, be specific with what they are. Goals, they need to be clear, ambiguous, let's see, or goals that are ambiguous, vulgar, they really have no place in goal setting. So when goals are specific, they tell you exactly what's expected, when, and how much. And because they're specific, you can easily measure it. So when you're evaluating your daily progress, you can see how fast you're progressing instead of saying, oh, well, I just want to pass the test, but you know, I haven't studied looking back, so maybe I should start. And they need to be measurable. So as you're making that goal to pass the test, you're specific, you want to pass it with what I say, a 73% and above. If you say, if I got to do that, I've got to get through these 12 chapters of a book. By this time, I need to get through like one chapter a week, one chapter a day. It doesn't really matter. So we want to make sure that your goal is measurable. In my case, being in triathlon, if I ever want to be a faster running, which I absolutely suck at, it's being able to go, okay, I need to have my pace improved by like 10 seconds each week. Or if I want to be a fast enough swimmer, I need to go in and say, okay, I need to swim, 20 50s a day. And they need to be achievable. So, if my goal is to be that faster swimmer, can I reasonably swim, 20 50s in a day? Yeah. Can I swim 250s in a day? No. Would the 250 still make me faster? Absolutely. But it's just not achievable. And they need to be realistic. So in your case, finishing the bike ride, saying, okay, I need to go out and ride for an hour every day. And in that ride, in that hour, I want to cover 13 miles. Now, would it be realistic to say that I'm going to try and ride 23 miles if you're not an elite cyclist? Probably not. So we want to go, okay, I want to progress 1 mile per hour every 2 weeks. And then timely. So if we don't have a goal of when we want to have that original goal met, then we have a tendency to start pushing it off. So I forget your name already. Lisa. Okay, so with Lisa, the unrealistic goal was to lose 60 pounds. So if she says, you know what, I want to lose 60 pounds by 6 months. I want to lose about 2 to 5 pounds a week. Then she's going to have a better rate to lose that 60 pounds of saying I want to do it in 6 months versus, well, I just want to lose 60 pounds. Because I know when I was first losing my weight, that goal date never really came. It's like, well, I lost a couple of pounds this week, but I gained it all back the following weekend. So by setting those dates in stone, you kind of have like a nice little roadmap. And this is why when I talk to some of my athletes of, hey, sign up for a race. That means that, hey, you have to start training because you need to be ready to go on this date. And very rarely do I get, well, things haven't been going as planned. Can we push the race off? I'm like, no, 30,000 people signed up for this race. We can't just push it off. You need to get your butt in gear. So that's kind of what SMART goals are and some of the importance. It's kind of rehashed, but it is what it is. Now, with some of these goals is stress. I'm sure everybody is stressed out over something. And stress, Stress by far makes everything worse, and it has such a negative effect on our body that it actually starts to cause like illnesses, diseases. So the effects of stress can lead to cardiovascular disease, such as heart disease, some abnormal heart rhythms and heart attacks. It can also lead to, like, I know for me for a while, it was high blood pressure and strokes. And it can also help aid in diabetes, obesity, and other eating disorders just from stress alone. Anybody know why that might be? Yes. So cortisol is that stress hormone, and as cortisol goes up, it starts to have that negative impact on our body. So we want to try to do as much stuff as we can to kind of keep our cortisol levels low. And gosh, it sounds so easy to say it instead of actually do it. So the first part of kind of identifying stress, you know, it sounds really easy because we'll just say in my case, a car payment's due, and we'll say tomorrow, but I get paid on Friday. So that would be like, well, I'm stressing out. How am I going to pay that car payment? So we want to try to identify different stressors and triggers. A big one is emotional stressors. Can anybody think of what an emotional stressor might be? Good, good. That would be considered more of a change stressor, but that's a good answer. I know having a child, you'd just be like, holy crap. I'm going to go back. What's that?
Having that child get injured?
Relationship
Okay, yep. Worry.
issues.
Yep, that would be kind of a family stressor. Some of the emotional stressors are not just worrying, but fears. Some different personality traits like narcissism, or just an overall sense of helplessness on that, like you're making an impact on like yourself or people around you at school. Now for some family stressors, having a baby doesn't count. What about you back there in the corner?
Oh, that was mine.
Oh. Okay, so what about another one?
Family structure?
Yep.
Arguments with family?
Yep. Changes in relationships with your family members. So yeah, if you're arguing over something, my wife and I had an argument the other day of who's going to cook dinner. And, she gets pretty like stubborn about some of this stuff. So, I'm like, well, you make dinner. And so all of a sudden, like we both, being as stubborn as we are, we're just kind of like, well, fine. We're just going to be stubborn. And then, here's all this negativity in the air. And now it's 8 o'clock and I'm stressing. Great, I've got to eat. And, even financial problems. When the depression, recession hit and housing crisis, housing kind of just went kaput, people losing their jobs. Now they're stressing about how are they going to pay their mortgage? Are they going to lose their home? So that's just how some family stressors can affect you personally. So what about some social stressors?
Having to give a speech?
Yes. Yep, some people are absolutely terrified of it. Some of them are dating. I want to throw in getting married, because dealing with my wife when we were getting married was a huge stress on my life. Going to parties. Some people aren't very social, and so in the larger crowds they have a real hard time dealing with it. So that's a stressor on them. And going like tragic events like Las Vegas just happened. So now people that might be traveling are like, well, do I really want to go to Las Vegas because the shooting just happened? So all that stuff really plays a role in the social aspect of stress. And then there's some change stressors. We had having a baby. What might be another one?
New job.
Yep. And anybody else? Moving, yep. And those are the exact 3 that I had down. So, and then last but not least, what about work stressors? Deadlines, a new boss, email's not working, you can't get the deal signed for whatever sales thing is going on. So those are kind of the general categories of stressors and being able to identify them. Now it's how do we manage them? How do we kind of manage those stressors so that we don't stress out, so that our overall health isn't affected by it? We want to replace any type of unhealthy coping strategies and replace them with healthy ones. So what might be an unhealthy coping strategy?
Drinking.
Drinking, yes. Yes. So we'll just use drinking because I know happy hour would come when I was back doing my corporate job in the office, and we'd all go out and kind of just drink to help make some of the pain go away from the day. So what might we do to replace that with a healthy coping mechanism?
Exercise.
Yep. Keep it simple. So going out and, if you had a hard day at work, I'm going to use my wife again as an example. She helps manage a tax law firm, so she's always coming home with like stuff that happened that was just, sometimes it's stressful, sometimes she's sad, but she goes to the wine. And I've come to find out that's how most women like to do is, where's the wine? So I decided that I'd be the ever good husband and kind of coach and motivational person and go, well, why don't we go for a walk to deal with stress? And she gave me the look of death of, don't talk to me the rest of the afternoon. But I tried. So it's just we want to try to recognize some of these habits so that we can make the changes. Now, how do we, I didn't even type this right, but there's 4 A's that we can use to avoid and manage our stress in our life. The first A is to avoid it. How do we avoid stress? If it's somebody that's constantly coming to you that constantly needs help, in my case, I'll use my brother. He's younger and he's always asking me, hey, how can I do this? How can I do that? Sometimes he'll go, well, do you have any money that you can spare me? Because he was in and out of a job. And learning to say no helps take a lot of that stress off me. Because he is, in his early 20s, so it's like, okay, look, you're young, you've got to go out and go get a job. But no more coming to me for money. And avoid people who stress you out. My next door neighbor, I absolutely hate him. Because I don't know, they're constantly making noise next door. So I work from home, and this is an old man. I probably shouldn't hate him, but he's got his TV on so loud where I can hear it through like any window, and it vibrates the wall. So I'm like, dude. So what we've done is I fought to move apartments. I'm like, I can't do this. So if maybe it's somebody that might be in the office that, for some reason they're a Debbie Downer and they want to use you as the outlet, just avoid them. And then you want to take control of your environment. Your choice is really the thing that we have the utmost control over. So if it's in your house, try to control as much around you as you can that you have control over. And then pare down your to-do list. I'm not a big to-do list type of person, but my wife is. So she is constantly checking stuff off. Because if you're a to-do person, all of a sudden this to-do list starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it turns into a honey-do list. The next A is to alter. So we can express our feelings instead of bottling them up. we can also be willing to compromise and kind of change maybe a negative outlook on something to more of a positive. And we want to create a balanced schedule. So be willing to compromise. Sometimes it sucks, but if you can get over that initial kind of stubbornness, like in my case with the dinner, probably could have avoided all that had I just thrown something in the microwave that was pre-cooked. And create a balanced schedule. These days, in today's world of go, 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 we don't put a whole lot of time into time for ourselves. And kind of in that self-care is when we can center ourselves, how we want to get through the day, find more positive instead of negative. And going back to what we first went over, we can build it into kind of a pre-performance routine. So the third A is adapt.